Welcome to 2024. I want to welcome you back to our Defenders Digest in this brand new year. It's our first edition in 2024. And just a quick recap for those of you that are new to Defenders Digest. JP here and I will be giving you a recap of all things related to ERP security. Our goal is to keep this information timely and relevant for all of our defenders out there. All right, so since our last Defenders Digest was in 2023, we have a lot to catch up on. As always, let's kick this off. Patch Tuesday findings from 2024 so far. JP, how about you do the honors and take us through it?
Absolutely. Thank you, Paul, and welcome back. Happy to be here in February, starting with the first Defenders Digest, for 2024. And we have a lot of content as usual, and we'll have a lot more content in the upcoming weeks and months as well. We are working on many initiatives, so you'll hear from us as we develop more and more of these chapters. As Paul was mentioning, I'm going to give you an overview on the last 2 months, Patch Tuesdays. January, we had 12 new and updated security patches, including 3 hot news and 4 high priority nodes. So it's important to stay on top of security nodes. Research labs, the Analysis research labs, contributed in January as well in February with different SAP nodes affecting the ICM, the web dispatcher, different hot news and high priority nodes that our team is continuously reporting to SAP and working with the product security response team. In February, we had a little bit more. We had 16 new and updated SAP security nodes with 2 hot news and 6 high priority nodes. There was a critical code injection vulnerability, an RFC-enabled function module allowing generic method calls. That's similar to a prior vulnerability that was reported by Analysis some time ago. So it's important to stay on top of these patches because some of these functionalities, especially the RFC-enabled function modules, sometimes require a small number of authorizations and allows users to perform very critical activities. So it's not just about enabling authorizations to transactions and reports. It's also important to stay on top of anything that is remote enabled as RFC function modules. So Paul, back to you.
All right, thanks for that review, JP. I always appreciate hearing that review. One area that we wanted to cover is Volt Typhoon. It is a name describing nation-state Chinese state hackers. They're claiming that they're ready to go ahead and launch destructive attacks on multiple critical infrastructure sectors in the event of a military attack. We've got guidance coming in from the Five Eyes, which is the FBI, the NSA, CISA, and international partners like the UK's NCSC. They're saying that the Chinese threat group Volt Typhoon has positioned itself in sectors including communications, energy, transportation, water, and wastewater. This joint advisory issued by the Five Eyes provides a solid framework for security best practices like monitoring, patching, and network segmentation. It's critical, however, to broaden our scope beyond the highlighted areas, as attackers often target overlooked vulnerabilities. So let's dive into that for a second, right? What does that mean, overlooked vulnerabilities? Volt Typhoon and other advanced threat actors in the past they're not always into executing ransomware on a target environment. They're not always into wanting to become detected or perform something malicious to bring systems down. Part of their motivation is getting into a target environment and persisting for long periods of time without being detected. One of the best ways to go without being detected is essentially living off the land, which is something that Volt Typhoon has been doing. Living off the land means that you are using existing operating system files, functions, tools, applications, that threat intel, threat research might not necessarily say these things are bad or are going to cause you any particular kind of threat to your environment. So this is a big challenge for security practitioners because we're always looking for those vulnerabilities. We're always looking for those things that can be used maliciously, right? In this case, you have to go a step further and you have to look at those processes, those tools, those tunnels, whatever they might be, in a way that really wasn't meant to be looked at and that might not be set up for proper monitoring. So one question I have in my mind, and I'm going to pass this over to JP, is how exactly is it that we, Onapsis, are helping our customers to engage in this type of monitoring and detection?
That's a very good question, Paul. And it's the first thing you ask yourself when you start hearing about these advanced threat actors, how they compromise and they penetrate into different organizations. And of course, as everything in security, it starts by hygiene, basic hygiene. So you cannot be preparing yourself against an advanced threat actor if you haven't closed your low-hanging fruit, your critical vulnerabilities in your system. So you need to have a vulnerability management program, right? You need to prioritize vulnerabilities across your landscape, servers, networks, workstations, applications, business applications. So all of these are parts of your landscape. So a vulnerability affecting one component could potentially jeopardize the entire landscape. And then it becomes obvious that you need to monitor, right? You need to be able to have visibility into what's happening in the environment. What are users doing? What applications are being accessed? But then if we want to be prepared against these advanced threats, well, we need to go beyond and we need to leverage advanced technologies like AI and machine learning. And that's something we have been working with customers to be able to really model how users behave and how different entities behave across business applications in a way that you can see what's critical, what's sensitive to an application, but also what's anomalous. And the intersection of that is something that you can prioritize in terms of reviewing what's happening in the system. So I would say there are a number of ways that you need to tackle this problem. Of course, from complexity, from low to high, but it all boils down to really start paying attention to that, prioritizing those programs, vulnerability management, continuous monitoring, incident response, and then leveraging advanced technology like machine learning, like AI, and be able to have that visibility into what's happening in the landscape. So I know there are many different ways, but this is one of the mechanisms we use with our customers to start preparing themselves against this type of threats.
Yeah, thanks for going through that, JP. One trivial example that comes to mind readily is, say you have your servers, your hosts, where you're not expecting to use what would normally be a benign application, right? On your laptop, you might use Calculator, for instance, or you might use Notepad or something like that, a sort of a utility application. But all of a sudden, you might have a DLL tied to that you might use on your client laptop, but that DLL might be just configured as part of the OS install on a host that's running your SAP or that's running some sort of other business critical application. And that DLL might never be touched or might never be used. So you're not going to really go ahead and detect it because it's not this well-known malware or it's not tied to a vulnerability per se. That's where I think what we're talking about, right? This maturity, this looking at it from a machine learning perspective and profiling users and profiling files, and providing the context for those profiles too. So if you're accessing a particular DLL on your laptop, that might be fine. But if that DLL is being used on a server that's never been touched before, that would be a good indicator to say, hey, let's throw up an alarm and let's take a look at what this is all about. Because that's really living off the land. And that's that's just an academic example at this point for how a threat actor like Volt Typhoon might be operating, using artifacts that are considered benign on operating systems, server environments that would go undetected through threat feeds, threat research. But once you start profiling and it's used one time where it has never been used, that's a perfect example of you need to get your SOC to investigate and see why that alert was triggered. All right. So before we close, I know that in the past Defenders Digest, we've talked about how the Anapsys Research Labs was hiring new security researchers. Well, I want to share the good news is that we've finished that out. We've hired on all our new security researchers. They're all onboarded and we're working as a larger team now. Thanks very much. Applause to all our new researchers that have joined. With that said, thank you again for joining our first edition of Defenders Digest in 2024. JP, any additional words you want to share?
Just excited to be recording a new chapter with you, Paul, and really looking forward to all the upcoming ones during 2024. Lots of good stuff up and coming, and I'm really excited about it.
Awesome. Me too. Thanks, JP. And thank you, viewers. If you ever have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you to Debbie for sending duckies for Defenders Digest. So we have dedicated Defenders Digest duckies. 5 of
That's awesome.
3, 2, 1. Well, welcome everybody. I'd like to I already blow it up with my brain fog. Oh man. Ducks, help me out here.